My name is Daniel Mills, and I'm doing my author discussion for AFAS 160. The topic I chose was the Black Arts Movement. So a little bit of background information on the Black Arts Movement. It was essentially the development of black art forms from the mid-1960s to the mid-1970s, primarily poetry and plays, while it did also feature other forms of art. It was a name given to the period of time where black writers, poets, and artists and musicians were politically and socially motivated from recent events such as the Martin Luther King and Malcolm X assassinations. The formal start of the Black Arts Movement is said to be in Harlem, New York, 1965, when black poet Amiri Baraka established the Black Arts Repertory Theater. This theater focused on producing black plays by the black community that were confrontational, as well as addressed the issues that the blacks were dealing with at the time. As I said earlier, while there were other types of literature that developed during this time, poetry and plays were by far the most common form of expressing ideas. One of the key figures, one of the most key figures, if not the most key figure, was Amiri Baraka, and he was a black poet, also formerly known as Leroy Jones. He is said to be the most influential figure of the Black Arts Movement. He is also known as the father of the Black Arts Movement because he established the Repertory Theater. A little bit of background on his life: he attended Rutgers University, Howard University, and Columbia University, as well as served 3 years in the United States Air Force. His poetry, along with his essays and dramas, featured the issues and concerns of Black Americans. Usually, in all of his works, the message was very powerful, and he did create a lot of controversy. Most of the works that he published were political, but there were some social. As I said, he was both praised and criticized for his works. His works often fostered hate between black and white races, but because they were so extreme, but also they were successful in speaking out against oppression in America during the time. As I talked a little bit about earlier, he established the Black Arts Theater in Harlem. And this theater showcased primarily anti-white plays that were written for the black community. But when this theater disbanded, he moved to New York and established the Spirits House Players, which is much like his first theater in the sense that it had plays that were anti-white and they were written for the black community. Another notable figure during this time was Nikki Giovanni. Nikki Giovanni was, upon graduating from Fisk University in 1967, quickly became an influential figure of the movement. Almost right out of college, she returned to her hometown, or the town she grew up in, of Cincinnati, where she was able to establish the first Black Arts Festival there. One of her most famous works that in a way set precedent for future Black arts movement works was Black Feeling, Black Talk. This book is a collection of political and personal poems that highlight the importance of individuality amongst black people during the time. One of the most famous poems that's highlighted in this work is Nikki Rosa. In this work, Giovanni discusses her experience growing up as a black woman and some of the hardships that she faced. This poem particularly highlights the certain commodities that white people got that were seen by black people as luxuries. For example, she talked about how the joy she got when she was able to have a bath and when it was her turn to have a bath. So, like, in retrospect or in comparison, white people wouldn't really feel this way, and they would just assume that they're going to have a bath every day. Throughout her career, she earned many awards, including Woman of the Year from Ladies' Home Journal in 1973. And following the movement, Giovanni was able to continue to speak out on black individuality. Another key figure during this time was Hoyt W. Fuller. Hoyt Fuller was a black writer and editor, but he became known more for his editing, or for being an editor for the Negro Digest, which later became known as the Black World. So the Negro Digest was an African American magazine that covered positive stories from the black community that were written by black people. And he, because of his display or being able to display these works, he was often referred to as the voice of many black Americans. While he did not create the magazine, he revamped it in a way that gave a new purpose in displaying ideas. The creator Johnson, after disbanding it and then rebanding it, he gave fuller editorial status where he was able to change it. Another piece of work that is famous of his is his autobiography, Journey to Africa, which was published in 1971. This story discussed the frustrations with oppressive America and also his inability to find a job after he lost his. One of the most notable works in the Black Art movement was by Amiri Baraka, and it was called Black Art. This is considered one of the most controversial works during the movement. It tied politics and arts together and specifically talked about black people being able to stand up for themselves and in a way produce their own works that were different from white people's. He felt that he studied that throughout the work that many black pieces of art were useless to the black struggle because they kind of just followed the white standard of work. He mainly wanted people to express themselves in their work and defend their race rather than just writing to white standards. The work ties politics and arts together by stating that through art, black people need to challenge the social norm or status quo. Another famous work, also written by Amiri Baraka, was The Revolutionary Theater, and this was published in 1965, around the same time that the Black Arts Repertory Theater was established in Harlem. This work was an essay that called for a change regarding black people's need to stray away from white aesthetic and establish their own identity. He felt that black people didn't have any identity as an art form and were instead just writing as if they were white people. He also talks about how there needs to be a voice of change because every single voice of change that in America had been murdered, such as John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr. Like I talked a little bit about earlier, he uses strong and shocking language to, in a way, scream at his readers and get his message across much clearer. Part of the reason why he did receive a lot of controversy during his career. But the main purpose of this work was to encourage black people to branch off from white art and make their own that would challenge the current social standings and status quo.